Okay. Start the review. I'll explain later. Oh. Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. This movie came out in 1987 along with... You've got to be kidding me. You're telling me that both the third and fourth Superman and Jaws sequels came out the exact same year and both kind of fell in the same area of shittiness? Wow, if that's not a coincidence, I don't know what is. But anyway, this is the fourth Superman movie, and the final one to star Christopher Reeve as Superman. What a way to go out. So I want to try to describe the plot as best as I can, but there's just so many things that happen that I'll just say that there's an issue with nuclear weapons going on. Lex Luthor breaks free from jail again, who creates a being that's just as powerful as Superman called Nuclear Man, and Superman tries to save the day. That's the best summary I can do, because this is a totally random movie. I'll get back into that aspect a little later. But like I said before, this is the fourth Superman movie, but within this series of movies, this is technically the fifth movie, because a year after Superman 3 came out, we got a Supergirl movie, which was supposed to take place within the same universe as the Superman series, and even had the same actor who played Jimmy Olsen. And they even wanted Christopher Reeve to try and make a cameo as Superman, but he just said no. And it was directed by the director of Jaws 2. Why the fuck do the Jaws sequels keep popping up in these reviews? That is just eerily creepy. But anyway, I never saw Supergirl. Maybe one day I'll watch it and review it, but right now I'm just focusing on Superman. So with Superman 4, it is easily the worst Superman movie ever made, and one of the worst movies ever made, ever. That's redundant, but okay, moving on. Now, this movie is never offensive or anything, but this movie is just so bland, so idiotic, so cheap. Nobody gives a shit about what's going on in this movie at all. It is just mind-boggling how bad this is. And this is especially frustrating, much like with the Jaws series, when you take into consideration that the first movie was a masterpiece. And in Superman's case, both the first and second movies were masterpieces. And to just see the series de-evolve into the shitstorm that is Superman 4 is... It's sad. Like I said, nobody gives a shit about what's going on in this movie at all. Particularly Christopher Reeve and Margot Kidder as Clark Kent / Superman and Lois Lane. Both of them look so tired, so disinterested, that Superman suddenly has no personality. He is dull. And Margot Kidder just looks exhausted here. It really looks like she doesn't want to be in this movie. And throughout the whole movie, it looks like she came to work without any makeup, and apparently the movie was so cheap that they couldn't afford a makeup artist to kind of fix her up. She just looks awful here. And with your other actors, there is no good performance at all. The only one who seems to be trying is Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor once again. And I feel like it's just another paycheck for him. I mean, he's probably the most charismatic, but there's nothing about this performance that makes him stand out. And it's just Gene Hackman kind of going through the motion. But the worst performance in this movie has to go to Mariel Hemingway, who plays Lacey, a new love interest for Clark Kent. Her acting in this movie reminds me of Jessica Alba's acting, where, yeah, she might look pretty, but she is not a good actress at all. But I've seen her be good before in Woody Allen's Manhattan, which was long before this movie even came out. But with this movie, she's just bland, uninteresting, and she never emotes throughout this whole thing. It really makes her stand out as the worst actress in the movie. And then you have the guy who plays Nuclear Man, but let's be honest, you don't know his name, I don't know his name, but if you really want me to say it, Mark Pillow. That's a weird last name. But yeah, he's the guy that plays Nuclear Man. And throughout the whole movie, he has this scowled look. He's just so boring. And you don't even hear his actual voice. His voice is dubbed over by Gene Hackman. You know what? I should probably talk about Nuclear Man right now. This is another instance where they pull a villain out of their ass just for the movie. He's not from the comics. He's very much like the Lex Luthor ripoff in Superman 3, and it seems like with every other movie they want to have this kind of villain. Like with the odd number movies, they wanted a billionaire genius like Lex Luthor, and then every even numbered movie they wanted a superpowered being like General Zod. And Nuclear Man is basically trying to be like General Zod in terms of the fact that he and Superman are both godlike beings. But Nuclear Man's origin is just so goddamn ridiculous. It's pretty much Lex Luthor steals a strand of Superman's hair, combines it with his own DNA, then some sort of thing where the computer will weave an outfit, it gets sent into the sun, attached to a nuclear bomb, and Nuclear Man is born from the sun, right down to him starting out as a goddamn fetus. He has these really long fingernails that look like they belong to the Cash Me Outside girl. It is just a stupid villain. Probably the scariest thing about Nuclear Man, and I have to give credit to Doug Walker, the nostalgia critic, for pointing this out, is that he shares the exact same origin as Doomsday from Batman vs. Superman. It's an element that makes me hate BVS even more, and now that it's in my head, it can never leave. You'd think that being another superpowered being like General Zod or like Superman, that would make for some really badass action sequences, because ever since Superman 2, people wanted to see a legit fight between Superman and someone who's equal in power to Superman. Well, in order to have those, you gotta have some good special effects, which this movie has none. The special effects in this movie are awful. They're so cheap looking. And the thing is, there are a lot of special effects here. I think out of all the Christopher Reeve Superman movies, this is the one that has the most special effects in any of them. And they are unbelievably unconvincing. They are special effects on the level of a 1960s Japanese monster movie. And I'm not talking about on the level of one of the Godzilla movies. I'm talking about on the level of one of the Godzilla ripoffs, like The X from Outer Space. In terms of The X from Outer Space, it was a movie made just to cash in on the success of Godzilla. It was made by another studio who clearly did not have a talented special effects director on board, so all the special effects look incredibly cheap. And that's how this movie feels here. When you watch Superman 1 and 2, and even to an extent 3, the special effects are very convincing. This movie, not so much. Those green screen effects are so obvious. The models are terrible. There's this one shot of Superman flying towards the camera that they recycle over and over and over. And it's not like just it's different shots of Superman flying. No, it's the exact same shot of Superman flying towards the camera with the exact same motions. And it just... ugh. And you start to get an idea of how cheap the movie's gonna be from the opening credits. Now, this is not an instance like with Superman 3, where watching the opening credits, you can already tell that the movie's gonna be shit. Because the opening credits are actually kind of back to form in terms of a Superman movie, where it has the John Williams theme, it's set in space, the credits are flying away from the camera, except this time it's not the epic feeling that you got when watching Superman 1 and 2. The credits look unbelievably cheap, and it's just a big foreshadowing of what's to come. Now, I mentioned maybe once or twice that the movie is random. And when I mean random, I mean random. There are just subplots in this movie that pop up out of nowhere, don't go anywhere. There are a million plot points left and right. The editing in this movie is terrible. And it's because all these plot points are introduced out of nowhere. Like there's a big crisis about the summits failing, pops up out of nowhere. The opening scene of the movie where Clark Kent's trying to sell the Kent farm goes nowhere. The scenes with the kid Jeremy go nowhere. And there are several moments in this movie where they blatantly rip off the first Superman movie and even the second one. Most famously, the flying sequence from Superman 1, where Lois Lane and Superman are flying over the skies of Metropolis. I almost said Manhattan. Might as well be, because throughout all these movies, New York is pretty much Metropolis. But back to the flying scene. When you think of the flying scene in Superman 1, it's beautiful, it's majestic, it's somewhat poetic. And in this movie, it's a blatant ripoff. The green screen effects are terrible. Both actors do not look like they're even invested in what's going on, but thankfully it's short. It doesn't go for the long, lengthy period of time that the first flying sequence did. And then that scene ends with a ripoff of the mind-erasing kiss from Superman 2. At this point, I just feel like I'm rambling, because everyone's had a shit ton to say about this movie. It's horrible, it's garbage. Is there anything good about it at all? I tried to think of something good in this movie. I watched this from beginning to end, and I can't think of a single thing that I can say that's a legit positive thing, because at least Superman 3, as bad as that movie was, had some really good moments to it. It had a lot of potential. This movie has nothing, and what really broke me, you want to know the reason why I was laughing my ass off in the beginning of this review? It was the ending. I shit you not, when I was watching this movie and it got to the ending where Nuclear Man grabs Lacey, flies her into space where she's perfectly able to breathe, and then Superman moves the moon out of orbit to block the sun to depower Nuclear Man, and then takes Lacey back to Earth where she's still fine and perfectly able to breathe in space. I couldn't stop laughing. Like, it just broke me. I was watching this ending and just seeing all of these idiotic moments, and I was just like, okay. The movie seriously broke me. That ending just, it killed me inside. I was laughing my ass off at the ending, which is probably the best thing I can say, is that there are points that are very, very funny, but not in the way that they intended you to laugh. So, there's honestly not much to say. Don't waste your money on this movie. And it's not only one of the worst superhero movies ever made, but it's one of the worst movies ever made, period. It's god-awful in every single aspect. And what's even more sad is that this is the last movie with Christopher Reeve as Superman. The very last movie with Christopher Reeve in his most iconic role is one of the worst movies ever made. That is some shit right there. Not much else to say. It sucks. Don't waste your money. Again, it never made me angry, but it's dog shit. And that's my review for Superman 4 and all the Christopher Reeve Superman movies. Now, next week is going to be my last Superman review, Superman Returns, which I've only seen once in the theaters. I don't remember that much of it, so I'm really curious to rewatch it. It'll be like watching it for the first time all over again. And until then, I hope you enjoyed this review. Leave a comment down below and tell me what your thoughts are on Superman 4, if and when you've seen it, God forbid. And as always, this is the real Mr. Robinson telling you there's only one.